So first question, why is attention important and why is it something that we seem to be talking about so much these days, the advertising industry?
It's always been important from the standpoint of advertising effectiveness to consider all variables that could make some impressions more sales effective and brand perception effective than other impressions. So the topic has generally been around for a long time. Years ago, MRI and Simmons put questions into their questionnaire about attention, asking people to remember how attentive they are during specific programs, as an example. Why it's more important today is because we now have cross-platform measurement coming. And the advertisers are heavily invested emotionally and soon financially in supporting better cross-platform measurement. Mm-hmm. So there's a great deal of concern that as we throw impressions into one big cross-platform bucket, that they're not all equated when they may not be equal in their impact and their value.
And so it's a good segue into the state of attention measurement today. You talk about cross-platform being important. Do you feel like the entire, all stakeholders in the industry are either quite bullish on attention measurement or at least understanding that it's something they need to pay more attention to?
Well, the problem has been for a long time that at the highest levels of corporate management, there's very little understanding about advertising and marketing in general. Mm-hmm. There's a general unspoken belief, tacit belief that impressions are impressions, and that what you should do is get the best creative and then get as many impressions for as little money as possible. And that permeates the contracts that big advertisers make with their agencies, where the agencies guarantee impressions, numbers of impressions, not the quality of impressions, not the sales effect, et cetera. So for as long as those things persist, it's going to be an uphill battle for those of us like you and me and our companies and other people that are involved in attention and emotion and resonance and psychological impact of advertising. It's always been an uphill battle. Why is it less of an uphill battle now? Is because of the general changes that are taking place. There's never been so much change involved. So when everything is shifting around, people open their minds a little bit and let a little bit more in.
And that brings us to a $10,000 question. Who should pay for attention metrics, or is it dependent on the situation?
Well, the reality is the advertiser is really paying for everything. But it trickles down through the various levels. The advertisers pay the media and the agencies pay the suppliers of research and so on and so forth. This is the way it's generally been. The advertisers have now offered through the WFA and ANA cross-platform initiative that they are going to put money in directly into cross-platform measurement. But for companies like Realeyes and RMT and the other colleagues that we have across the industry that are measuring attention or emotion or something psychological, the media are generally putting up substantial amounts of money because they want to prove they've got skin in the game.
Right.
They want to know that they've got value in their impressions. They want to be able to prove they've got value in their impressions. So they're stepping up, and of course. There are people within advertiser organizations who are willing to go to bat for doing the thing right, regardless of what top management understands or doesn't understand. So brands are stepping up in large numbers, probably for the first time in history, to go beyond the borders of simple measurement to psychological understanding.
Do you feel like creative attention and media attention should work together, and what's the best way for an advertiser to think about those two things and how they sort of complement each other?
Well, to the consumer, to the human being who's exposed to advertising, there's no such thing as creative and media. It's one experience.
Right.
And, so it's an abstraction to think of them as separate things. I learned early in the game, trying to understand context effects, that there's a tremendous covariance between the specific creative and the context. So you have to measure their relationship, not just how they independently perform. The best way to do it, I recommend controlled testing, experimentation, random control trials. And using factorial design, you can separate the effects of the creative and the media, and also separate out the effects of their covariant effect. So you can measure everything, and it won't just be simple correlation. It'll be causational research, science. And so you'll be able to confidently, if you're an advertiser, agency, or a media, you'll be able to confidently act upon the findings.
Mm-hmm. What are some organizations, companies, brands, advertisers you think are really doing attention well, or pioneering or leading the discussion?
Well, I think the people leading the discussion are the practitioners, this new cadre of extremely advanced, sophisticated thinkers who are trying to do it right. Realeyes, Lumen, Amplify Intelligence, media science. And I've just named the four that are really focused on getting the measurements right.
Mm-hmm.
And to some extent, that's a post hoc thing, measuring what did happen. But then there's Adelaide, who is also very active in thought leadership and writing tons of great stuff, like everyone is that I've just mentioned, as well as my organization, RMT. Well, we're all contributing to uplifting the industry's awareness of all the different variables that go into this. Adelaide is more focused on the pre-buy situation. How does Adelaide come up with information before the buy is made, using whatever norms, proxies, predictive measures can be gotten from looking at the measurements post hoc over large numbers of cases, so that you could then in the buy optimize the buy in a way where the measurements will show that it worked. Not only did you get attention, but you got persuasion, and you changed people's motivations and their perceptions of the brand, and they took action and they bought it. And they also have a better attitude for long-term sales. So the brand is worth more if it were to be acquired.
Where do you see, the key discussion points, the key battles, and the focus where attention should be in the next 5 years?
Well, it's moving well right now, in that Realeyes it is kind of leading the charge into in the wild measurement, and I think in the wild measurement is going to be where it goes, more so than in the laboratory or forced viewing conditions or anything non-naturalistic. I think being able to measure attention in the wild, and also context. Resonance between the ad and the context, which RMT does, or between the ad and the individual ID, which RMT with its partner Samasio also does. All of these things happening at scale are going to make it extremely important. And more and more of it is programmatic. Linear is going to go programmatic. It's all going to be programmatic. It's all going to be optimization in real time, reoptimization, continuous reoptimization, continuous measurement. And that's where we'll all be in all aspects of the business. So attention has to go there too.
And so the downstream from that, or parallel to that, the creative teams will need to be more agile to be able to make edits or shift sort of creative thinking if the measurement is telling them that an ad isn't resonating.
I think that's the sleeping giant. I think you put your finger on something that most people haven't touched upon or realized yet. no pun intended, is the creative people have been siloed away from the media people. And in the current fragmented marketing as opposed to integrated marketing paradigm that we're forced to work through, which is highly inefficient and highly ineffective, in that situation, the creative people aren't as close to these conversations as the media people. They're not following what's going on with attention and so on and so forth. Their work isn't included in 99.9% of all marketing mix modeling. Marketing mix modeling assumes that it's all about money and media types. Nothing else matters. Nothing matters except that. When the creative matters more than all of that stuff. The ARF just did the latest analysis of the RMT method and found that it accounts the creative, as analyzed by RMT's lens, predicts 48% of the sales effect. Mm-hmm. Marketing mix modeling only attributes 7% of the sales effect to advertising. So that's how important the creative is. So I think waking up the creative people to this whole conversation about advertising and psychology and reality and business and how these things aren't being optimized yet, but it's within our grasp. We can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Bringing the creative people in and turning our tools to give them more insights to create better executions to begin with, and even going back to the brands and the CMO, getting them to conceptualize advertising strategies. We have to move upstream to that point, to where the creative is concocted, and bring them in, and we have to bring them into this.
Final question. Obviously, you've talked about there being some leaders. There's some brands that have really embraced this. There are brands that are just kind of figuring it out. So if you were, talking to someone who someone at an organization that realizes that they're not up to speed on attention, what is the best piece of advice for how to kind of dive in and learn more and become experts and be able to bring actionable next steps to their organization?
Well, if they're ARF members, they should ask the ARF content team to give them a package on attention, and they'll be somewhat overwhelmed by the volume that they'll get if they do that. People who are not ARF members and have to kind of cobble it together, Google search works very well, and there's tons of stuff on attention out there. One of the ways that might speed things up is to get involved, like with the Attention Council. Reach out to the Attention Council and see if there's a role that they can play operating with the Attention Council or even in it. ARF has a thing called the Cognition Council. Advertisers are invited to join. Of course, they have to be ARF members. Those would be some of my suggestions for how to get one's feet wet.
All right, Bill, I think that's all I have for you. Was there anything else you wanted to share, or you think we covered it all?
I think you asked great questions.
Great.